about practice of compassion.
Niji sambuton Allah, Rando Megadnanbe, Chu Samne, Chushe.
So in order to generate sincere, proper compassion, first of all, one should realize the suffering or the suffering condition of oneself. So if one has not realized the suffering condition of oneself, one's own suffering, it's difficult to generate a real, sincere compassion, a complete compassion toward the other sentient beings. So, so one should first meditate carefully. One should meditate and to realize. One must realize one's own situation in the samsara, one's own condition, that how we live and how we live in the cycle of suffering, and how we actually go through different realms of the samsara as a result of one's own karma and delusion. And so one should first realize this situation. So from beginningless time, we have gone through we have taken various different types of birth in samsara, in different realms, and experienced various types of suffering. And at present, we have obtained a human rebirth, but this rebirth, this human existence, is also actually based on the suffering. We experience the suffering of the birth. So that the suffering of the birth we have already passed. We have gone through that, and then from the second moment our birth till the end of our life, we are in the process and constantly in the process of degeneration, or the process of old age. So every moment we are actually reaching closer and closer to the end of this life, and physically and mentally, gradually the power, the force of body and mind both gradually degenerate till it completely collapse. So therefore, that is the in which we are still in this process. We are now living. This is the suffering of the old age. So usually we are not very much aware of this this constant the process of suffering of old age. It's because simply we don't pay any attention, or we are not aware of it. Actually, this is also a very deep and very heavy suffering. So actually, as we know it with our own experience, with all the evident examples, that when one grows old, then one loses all the strength and the power and the radiance of the body, and the appearance, one's external appearance of the body also becomes more and more weaker, and also more and more disagreeable. And also in all one's movements and actions, such as even to stand up, to sit down, and so on, then one one face more and more difficulty and more hardships as one grows older. So, for example, when sitting down, then it's not sort of one completely sort of falls down without full control of the body. And then also all the joints of the body become weaker and more stiff, and one becomes even dependable on stick and other supports. And also one's the power of vision also becomes more weaker and weaker. One is as one grows older and older, one experiences more and more difficulty of seeing things clearly and precisely. And same thing with hearing. Hearing, the power of hearing also gets less and less. And also in speaking to others, the clearness and the clearness of one's speech, voice, and everything also gradually degenerates, and one is unable to express things very clearly and strongly. And then one's natural, for example, the teeth and so on, they also gradually decays and falls away, and so the power of tasting, for example, also is much weaker. And then the most important degeneration occurs in the mind, so one becomes very forgetful and not sort of bright in the mind. And the body loses the strength. And then one experiences also various difficulties, problems, physical problems with different diseases and so on. And then one still remembers all the pleasures or all the involvements, the activities of one's what one has experienced in one's earlier stage of the life, but one is no more capable of experiencing, enjoying some pleasures, and also incapable of doing the same things. So by this, person also goes through a great state of mental suffering or depression, and also then more fear or concern generates in the mind towards the death, which is not far away. And then once children and families and other people also begin to abuse or look down or ignore. So therefore this the suffering of old age, though usually we are not very much aware of it, but actually if one thinks carefully, it is a very also heavy type of suffering. So usually we are not much aware of it, and we go through the process without much without shocking, or without shocking, because this kind of degeneration takes place in a very gradually and very slowly, in a very slow process, a little by little, all the time, and so therefore we get sort of used to it. Thus it becomes quite sort of unbearable. But if such a change takes place all of a sudden, for example, a person, a child, if today a person is still young, about 15, 16 years old, and the next morning, if one has turned to physically and mentally to a person of 60, 70 age, this change would be too much, and it will be a great shock, and the suffering would be unbearable. So therefore, if we live for a long time, we all must go through the same process of the suffering of the old age. And so and in addition to that, then there is also the suffering of illness or different kinds of diseases. So the suffering of illness or disease also is something which attacks in our life very, very frequently, and quite unexpectedly we experience this kind of suffering. And this suffering of illness, there are many different kinds, and it immediately sort of destroys the peace and the happiness, and then also one has to go through various difficulties, and one also loses the physical the strength and the power, and one loses the control of one's body, and so on, depending on what kind of disease we experience. But however, it exists the nature of great suffering, which also causes great harm in our life. So when illness or disease overtakes in our life, then although usually one is a strong, very healthy and very capable person, then when one is sort of overpowered by illness, then one loses all one's usual strength and capabilities, and then also one has to undertake various hardships, the medical treatments, and then the keeping special diet, and then taking special care of the body, and so on. And also then even the very favorable circumstance to which usually provide us with happiness and pleasure, such as, for example, good food or something like this. This also then can cause, when one is very sick or suffering from certain very heavy illness, then even those usual the favorable circumstance can also become an unfavorable circumstance or disturbing circumstance, because one cannot anymore digest the usual food and so on. And when the suffering of illness, when it gets very serious, then the main danger which it leads to, or the worry which it brings, fear which it brings, is the suffering of the death. So when we undergo certain very serious suffering of illness, then we even have to accept or bear the very harsh treatments, such as surgery or cutting pieces of our body, organs, and so on. All those things which usually would be quite unacceptable. Also, one has to sort of have to bear it and endure that hardships. And even though even we recover from the illness, often then people to spend the rest of the life sort of handicapped and so on. So it can also leave certain very negative, it can certain disease can cause great damage. And then there is the suffering of the death. So this is one of the most the frightful suffering in the life, which actually brings an end to this life, and so one goes through a process of great sufferings and confusion and fear in the mind, and so one goes through, before one dies, one goes through the process of great sufferings and also confusions and fears of the mind. And when death sort of takes place, then without any freedom, without any choice, one has to abandon, one has to give up all what is most agreeable and dear to one's mind, even if it's a nice country. When one departs from this life, or this country, beautiful, how beautiful it is, has to be left behind. Even if one has a very beautiful place, house to live in, which is very agreeable to one's mind, we have to leave that behind. And also the one's dearest friends or family members, relatives, whoever is quite inseparable, must be also left behind. And also the great wealth and possessions that we own, that we have accumulated with the great hardships and difficulties, are also to be left behind. So in short, all the acquaintances of this life, all the older acquaintances, what we have seen, what we have heard, what we know and remember, everything has to be left behind, and one has to continue, or one has to go in the future to the next stages alone, without any companion, without any help. And then if one has, if one carries much accumulation of unwholesome karma from this life, then it will lead us to still greater sufferings and difficulties in the future. And if one has some positive karmic force with oneself, there is a possibility to obtain a better status of life in the future. Even if one obtains a better rebirth, as long as we were bound to the samsara cycle of conditioned rebirth, then we again, even if we take rebirth as a human being, again one has to go through the same process of the suffering of birth, old age, illness and death as we experience now. So this suffering of birth, old age, illness and death, is endless. There's no end of that. By the force of karma, we go through this process again and again without any stop. So we should meditate on this, the fact or this condition of ourselves, in what sort of situation we are living, in what sort of process we are going through. We should meditate this, within oneself, upon oneself, not just like analyzing an object outside on somebody else, but upon oneself, how one is actually undergoing and subject to this kind of problem. If one meditates in that way upon oneself, within oneself, then it will help us to generate a sincere, renunciation or thought of renunciation. So when we have understood and realized the true the suffering condition of oneself, then we should transfer this to other sentient beings, and starting from, for example, one's mother, one apply the same understanding and realization of suffering and meditation on the suffering on that sentient being. So, taking oneself as for example, and if we apply the same meditation on other sentient beings, beginning from one's mother and gradually to all sentient beings, and also recognizing all sentient beings as something very dear and close to oneself, like one's mother of the present life. And this way, if we apply the meditation of the suffering on all sentient beings without exception, then a true compassion will generate in our mind.
대상 마제 신경 쓰는 지네 대원 되어가지고 농민 되어가지고 라나 지고 대원은 그저 종내 고아리 농민은 친구지네 밀려버려 가지고.
And also we should realize that all sentient beings, without exception, they're all they are all like well-wishers. They all wish something good or happiness for themselves and wish to be free from suffering. So there is no like ourselves. There is no difference between ourselves and others in this respect. All sentient beings, without exception, they keep themselves busy and active all the time in order to fulfill their this innermost wish, that is to be free from suffering and to gain happiness. Even the animals who also keep themselves busy and going here and there and doing something according to their ability, it's also for the same reason. And also the human beings like ourselves also keep always busy and always involved in something, in some activities all the time, is also for the same purpose, to attain happiness and to be free from suffering. So, although this is that is the wish, that's the wish of everybody, but most of the time the wish is not fulfilled. The happiness, they don't achieve happiness as we wish, and also they are not free from the sufferings that, from which we wish to get away. And on the contrary, for the purpose of attaining, for the sake of attaining some happiness and some pleasure, some happiness, we face lots of problems and difficulties and cause ourselves much greater, sometimes greater harms and sufferings. So although we always wish for happiness and wish always to be to remain in happiness without suffering, but we all the time we encounter various types of suffering, various types of problems and sufferings, difficulties from outside and within oneself, such as disease, such as illness. Though someone usually very healthy, very strong, very powerful, then when encounters when illness, the suffering of illness, like attacks such a person, then that person loses all the strength, all the capabilities, and suffer very much. And so this is all that's all a part of the. So this is all a sign that although we always wish for happiness and wish to be free from suffering, but we always encounter just the opposite. And also, although one accumulates wealth and great possessions, money and so on, for the sake of some happiness and pleasure, but then instead of this bringing happiness, then it again produces great suffering, worriness, and sort of worriness that we will lose it, or it will be stolen or robbed or like this. Then one again has to spend one's day and night always worrying about this, about how to protect it, how to maintain it, and so on. And also those people who attain certain high position or status in the society, they also that kind of a position, that kind of power also can change sometime completely an opposite, and one loses all one's power, one's fame, one's reputation, everything, and sometimes even end up in prison or in some great problems and difficulties like that. So this is also a sign that the wish is not fulfilled. So so like that, the sentient beings, although always wish for something good, then always encounter the negative circumstances, and where one sometimes loses one's life, one's possession, and everything. And also one encounters very outer circumstances, negative circumstances, like natural disasters, like earthquake and things like this, which causes great damage and destruction of one's land, one's also house, property, and even one's life. So like that, there are so many different types of sufferings or difficulties we experience, we encounter in our life, which we know with our own experience. So we must apply the same understanding on other sentient beings in order to develop a sincere consideration or concern or compassion towards them. Actually, a practice of the compassion or karuna or compassion is something which is developed gradually in our mind through meditation or through training of the mind. So it is something which must be developed through the practice of meditation, and in general there are two types of meditation: analytical type of meditation and concentrative type of meditation. And the kind of meditation like Rinpoche has just mentioned before, the meditating or thinking very deeply on the sufferings, the suffering conditions, different types of suffering of oneself and others, that kind of thinking, very deep and sincere thinking, that is called analytical meditation. So first we must apply the analytical meditation to realize clear and precisely all the true condition of the true condition of the sentient beings, and then this leads that analytical meditation leads to us to a conclusion that the conviction in the conviction in the actual the suffering condition of all sentient beings, and then one generates a sincere, like a wish or a motivation towards other sentient beings, to a sincere wish or aspiration to free them from such sufferings, and then one remain in that state of mind. That is a concentrative aspect of the meditation, which is the actual compassion. All the virtuous qualities of the mind, which we must develop on the path to the liberation, such as compassion and so on, they are all developed through the combined practice or development of these two types of meditation, analytical and concentrative meditation. So for example, if someone is practicing meditation like samatha, like single-pointed or mental quiescence, this type of meditation, then one uses mainly the concentrative type of meditation, and not so much the analytical one. Although analytical one is also necessary from time to time to keep the mind, to keep the meditation free from distractions or mental dullness and so on. This is applied from time to time, but most of the time we apply the concentrative or the single-pointed fixation. So a true compassion is a sincere motivation, a sincere wish which we develop in our mind towards all sentient beings, to free them from all their sufferings, to separate them from their suffering by understanding correctly the meaning of the suffering. So if one has developed a true compassion, or a nyingje in Tibetan and karuna in Sanskrit, however, if one has developed compassion, then it automatically leads to also the development of maitri, or loving kindness. That is the other aspect of the compassion. So a compassion can lead us to the development of the pure love, and vice versa. So they are interdependent. So the maitri, or the pure love, that is the other aspect of the compassion, the aspect of the same mind, which wishes to give happiness to the sentient beings, a wish towards sentient beings to be endowed with happiness. That is maitri, or loving kindness. So the compassion, let alone the great compassion, Mahakaruna, or the great compassion, towards all sentient beings without exception. There's no needless to say how powerful or beneficial it is. Even to generate a compassion, a boundless compassion, or just to generate a compassion towards any sentient beings is already it's a very powerful. It's a very virtuous force. It's very powerful, virtuous quality of the mind, which is the root of all path leading to liberation. So the compassion or the pure love is something which must be developed in our mind through the combination of the meditation or the training of the mind on one side, and on the other side through purification of the mind and accumulation of merit. So therefore it is not something, a compassion is not something all of a sudden can sort of all of a sudden can generate in the mind like that without actual proper training of the mind. So it cannot be cannot born in us miraculously, or nobody can actually help us to generate, to awake something in the mind through a miraculous power or anything like that. So so the practice of the development of compassion is and also the loving kindness is something so powerful that even if one tries to develop such a state of mind for a short time, it's already a very it's a very powerful means, and it's a very powerful means for the development of our mind. So the bodhicitta, the enlightenment mind, is also something which is developed as a result of generation of compassion and loving kindness, and it's also like a fruit of those state of mind, and so this state of mind can be developed through the combined practice of purification and accumulation of merit, and through actual practice of meditation. So such practice of meditation for developing compassion and so on must be endowed with the so-called the 5 powers. The first power is, or the first force, is the force of virtue seed. So virtue seed means a seed of dharma which must establish in our mind through various means of practice of dharma, through a purification practice or various other practices of dharma, physical practice of dharma through body, speech and mind. And the second force is the force of determination of the mind, so that one must be determined to develop these virtuous qualities of the mind, such as compassion, and loving kindness and so on. One must decide and fully determined to develop those qualities by all means. So actually determination of the mind is something which is necessary for every practice, for spiritual practice as well as for other worldly activities. If the determination of the mind is lacking, one will not be successful in one's pursuit. Even animals, if they lack, for example, the determination or the willpower, the determination of their mind to drink water, even if we try to put its mouth in water, it will not drink. But if that the determination is there, then even if we try to stop that animal from drinking, it will try find by all means some way to reach the water. So this also, when we are determined to earn some money, then one completely then dedicates one's time and energy for that particular purpose, and then we go out, and then we don't care anymore about hardships or difficulties, and we just do the work, engage in that work until one obtains one's fruit, and thus the work becomes very successful. So the determination of the mind, the power of the determination of mind, is something which is indispensable for the fulfillment or for the success of any kind of activities, spiritual or worldly, wholesome or unwholesome, even like in great wars and fightings, to be successful. This determination of the mind is very necessary. So for every case, spiritual or worldly, or wholesome, unwholesome, for any kind of activities, the determination of the mind is very important. And then another power, of course, which is very necessary, is the power of acquaintance, to develop the acquaintance. So this means to acquaint one's mind with with this particular training, with this particular practice, or to acquaint, gradually develop the acquaintance of the mind, not only sort of giving up after once, trying once or twice, but continue the acquaintance till one is fully accomplished in this method. And then we we need the power of eradication of eradicating the opposite. So that means, if, for example, for developing the compassion, the opposite of the development of compassion is the thoughts, actions and thoughts which causes harm to other sentient beings, causes suffering to other sentient beings. Such kind of thoughts or actions are actually is the main obstacle for developing compassion, love towards others. So, in order to generate a proper compassion, one must then eradicate, completely abandon this kind of thoughts and actions from one's mind. And even if we have done in the past, one should develop a sincere regret, repentance towards that, and try to purify them. So that is the force of eradication of the negative side, or the opposite. And then the power of dedication, or power of prayer, or power of the correct wish. That means then whenever one practices Dharma, whenever one practice or practice Dharma and accumulate some merit, we dedicate this as a means to develop the compassion, in our mind. So use all one's virtuous force, the force of prayer and everything for the development of compassion. So those are the four powers. So for all practice, for the development of any virtuous qualities of the mind, such as compassion, loving kindness, and bodhicitta, one must practice those five powers. So without this such a training, they cannot just generate like this simply by wishing or just miraculously in our mind. So, although we have not developed a complete or proper compassion towards all sentient beings without discrimination, that is still not developed in us, but we still have the potentiality or the seed of the compassion in us. Then when we see certain other sentient beings in great sufferings like this, in most of us, then a certain concern and certain concern for the suffering of that person, the condition of that person or that sentient being, usually, although it is not very profound, not very stable, it's a very temporary one, but still a sincere a thought arise in most of us. Such a thought arise. That is already like a seed or potentiality for the compassion, which can be developed to complete the Mahakaruna, great compassion towards all sentient beings.
It is
So the development of compassion is something very important. It's an essential practice for those who practice Dharma, and even for other people who are not necessarily practicing Dharma. If one can develop such a thought in one's mind and try to understand the suffering condition of all sentient beings, it will help very much and in many ways, and anyway it will help very much to purify one's karma and to accumulate merit for everybody.
Today, some don't Jama Tongji Gumbala, Joseph Songjaki Kazeta, Johnson Dala, Nirigin to Jimba the Pinches, Tadi Gomari. Joseph said the colors of the Pinches. Joseph Songjaki Kazet, Yamataka is Johnson Mambo the Pure and Jama Tingi Gumba to Smash, Cherry.
So, in the Sutra also it says that this kind of the virtues quality of the mind, such as compassion and wisdom, compassion and the pure loving kindness, metta, are very powerful. That the merit and fruit of such development of such mind is immeasurable. And it says that to, for example, to make offering of a special Zutsu is Zutsu. Holiness says it is like a special plate. It's a sort of big plate, and if one makes offering, daily offering of food to great rishis or great sages, great meditators, sort of feeding daily such plate full of food to making offerings of food to 500. Offering 300 such plateful full of the food to the great sages and meditators is a great accumulation of merit. However, this such a virtuous act is completely like excelled by somebody who develops pure loving or loving kindness for a moment. That the merit or the power of that virtuous mind completely excel all the virtuous, powerful virtuous action of making offerings and so on. So it says if one develops pure love, loving kindness, just for a moment, this will help the person to obtain 8 qualities of metta. So, however, in the time of degeneration and in a place where dharma is not very strongly flourished before, it's difficult to practice such state of mind or to develop such state of mind. It's harder. And then in general, there are many different types of unwholesome actions, but the one which is most harmful and like most unwholesome one is destroying lives of the other, humans or animals, destroying lives of the others, and a place where dharma is not flourished, then the people have not much consideration for the destruction of life of animals or other sentient beings. So the heaviest karma or the physical karma that one can accumulate is destroying the lives, in particular life of a human being.
me on very chabas, me gego in it, I'm a commando, you have a boost and a chibori, Mr. Chibori. Mr. But
so that means can human being any age, someone who is very old or someone who is middle age or a little child or even very little one in the womb of the mother, if one destroys such a life, a human being is killed. So when one accumulates such unwholesome karma like that, it's difficult to purify. Although it is something which can be purified, but with little effort or with little weak effort or practice of purification, such unwholesome karma cannot be purified. But in His Holiness says, it seems in the country, like in the West, nowadays more and more this kind of this type of unwholesome actions, destroying lives of other sentient beings, is very flourishing very much. So many of the very disastrous or very disastrous situations which are from natural disaster or anything like this, which causes causes a great danger or damage or destruction to a lot of people, which happens quite frequently in our world. This kind of situations are actually it's a fruit of the common fruit of a collective karma, unwholesome collective karma that many people accumulate together. So in particular, like the karma of destroying others' life, and the fruit of the collective fruit of such unwholesome karma is to experience the same danger or same destruction upon oneself. So before, when Dharma flourished in certain country, when Dharma flourished very much, then there are also people, every people observe all the precepts of the Dharma very sincerely, such as abandoning the killing or destroying life of others, and even making rules, for example, of or abstaining from the killing other sentient beings, even animals, and making rules, for example, in certain place, in certain area, for forbidding killing or hunting and so on. This kind of things were quite in a country where Dharma flourished very much. There are such spiritual or Dharma rules like this, which are observed by the practitioner, by the followers. But nowadays in the world, this kind of Dharma precepts and the rules are decreasing. Even in India, there's no such rules like that. There's no very little such kind of precepts and rules are very little observed by the people. So, in general, these disasters, natural disasters caused by different elements, earth, water, fire, and wind, and so on, all these are, it is also a fruit, a type of fruit of the collective unwholesome karma of the sentient beings. So, when there are true, sincere practitioners of the Dharma, in those places, the power of the practice of Dharma of that person can help very much to prevent or to stop this kind of interference. So developing a sincere, a deep compassion or karuna towards other sentient beings, even one sentient being, for a moment, for a very short time, it's already a very powerful practice, is a very powerful method. For example, Buddha Shakyamuni, when one time in his former lives, in one of his former lives, he's taken rebirth in the hell realm as a hell being, and one time that hell being has generated a very sincere compassion or sincere compassion, karuna, towards his own companion, the other hell being, who was suffering very much, and he wished to take upon himself this suffering of that other hell being. And so actually this compassion only towards one person, and it's also just for a while. But as a result of this, by the power of this karuna, this compassion, this virtuous state of the mind, immediately the state of that bodhisattva, the state of his being is immediately changed. So he immediately freed himself from the suffering of the hell and obtained more fortunate states of rebirth. So His Holiness said that in Tibet, on the big rivers and so on, people cross the river in a kind of boat made of skin boat. So then when a lot of people sit in such a boat, such a little boat, it can happen quite often that the boat sink in the water. So one time some people, quite a few together, sat in such a boat and was sailing towards a place called Chasal Hakang. There's a temple, and because by the weight of the overloading this little boat, they were drowning in the water. So then the boatman got very scared, and he told them now it is time for the death for everybody. And then one of the person then generated sincere motivation, and he thought to let all these people to die, sink in the water would be very very unfortunate. So one person out of that jumped off the boat in the river. So he jumped off the sacrificing himself for the benefit of others, and so by one person less, then the boat is more lightened, and then it again they could again sail the boat, and this danger it's gone. So and then this way he saved the life of those people in the boat, and also as a result of this good motivation and this sincere proper motivation and action, then that person also was carried away by the current for some distance, and after he was thrown on one side of on the shore. So this is also a virtuous, the fruit of the developing a virtuous state of mind, or a compassion, or a sincere consideration for the suffering of other sentient beings. Also similar things happened. His Holiness said that once in the valley which is called in Yadung, there was a great flood and landslides and flood and so on, and so that little valley is completely blocked, and the water has risen up, and it has damaged lots of houses and so on. So there was a little there was a house, a little family with one mother and two daughters, and so their house is just about to collapse, and they had a little temple upstairs with many scriptures, the scriptures of Kanjur and so on in their temple. So the mother was tried to put the two daughters under the protection of these scriptures, and sort of sacrificing herself, and the two daughters did the same thing to put the mother in this under the scripture. And anyway, at the end, they all together they try to hide themselves under the scripture, and after the house collapsed and everything all around is completely collapsed, but that little part of the building with that little temple with the scriptures on top and with the three people under it remained, and the people had to take them after with the ladder, putting ladder on and so on. So this is also a fruit, very evident fruit, very quick result of fruit of wholesome state of mind, a good motivation.
람린 이치는 거의 소담으로 제대로는 그걸 찍고 공사요 뭐 장마 이진이 뭐나 민중고 수전 타제 마시베 가린 제마도 랑라미베 민중고 다 민중 지어라 내가 소비도 없는 게 버는 거 민중고 한테네 방어들 누구네 또 봤으면 되지 매 지운 거래 그럼 동의 끝나러 왔다 자원이네 배 민중으로 자는 멤버 신신 동의 끝나러 왔다 이제 가내지 제사요
So His Holiness he has been asked to give a talk on the developing compassion and loving kindness and so on. However, these are some very important essential points of the teaching of Lamrim or the practice of Lamrim, which he cannot just sort of single out, take apart from the rest of the teaching and from the rest of the stage of the practice or meditation. So therefore one, in order to develop the compassion, proper compassion, first one must generate the correct renunciation. And to generate a correct renunciation, one must realize the suffering of one's own, the general suffering of the samsara and individual suffering of the samsara, first upon oneself. So it is something one must gradually develop from the beginning stage, and then one can actually develop the complete and correct compassion. It is not something we can take out just like that from the rest of the path. So if you wish to develop a real, the correct and sincere compassion, one must gradually learn and put into practice these the stages of the Lamrim. So His Holiness says, if you wish to practice Dharma correctly and in a proper way, then you should practice all these stages of the Lamrim one after another from the foundation. So you should not sort of look up on some very high advanced practice or stages without laying a good foundation. For example, if you wish to have a fruit, fruit or fruit tree, first one must plant the seed, sow the seed underground, and then take good care of it, give water and everything necessary, and then a little sprout will come out. And then first there are only 2 leaves, and then after then one should take great care and raise it up, and more leaves and more branches gradually will develop, and if we still take good care, then after it will become a real big tree which can give every year fruits, and then also flowers and various other qualities like that. So it is all these kinds of the result or the favorable, the fruits are dependent on the root. So in the same way, we should first develop on the path in a gradual process, first recognizing the recognition of human rebirth, then impermanence, then on the sufferings of the unfortunate status, then the understanding and practicing the law of karma and fruit, the law of cause and effect, and then the sufferings of the samsara, and then gradually moving to other sentient beings and realize their suffering, developing the equanimity, compassion, loving kindness, and bodhicitta, and then one enter in the practice of the Tantra, of the Vajrayana, and then gradually practice all the stages, stage of generation and completion and so on, and then one will achieve. If one proceed like that correctly on the path, one will then achieve very good result. So if such a practitioner, if there is such a practitioner who practices Dharma correctly and sincerely, and who also keeps all the vows and the pledges, samayas and so on, sincerely, even if there is one such practitioner in the country, it benefits, it's beneficial for the whole country. So in order to help other sentient beings through the Dharma way, first one must, and it's indispensable that one must practice, one must practice Dharma within oneself, abide oneself in the practice of Dharma. There's no other way to give the Dharma to the others, help others in Dharma without the development within oneself. And if someone is not a practitioner of Dharma, or maybe practitioner of some other methods, if one finds that method or that particular method tradition very beneficial, one must practice it sincerely, wholeheartedly. One should follow the method and practice it. And if one is not practitioner of any particular method, and just ordinary person who is not at all concerned about anything like that, but still, if one can practice, observe the law of karma and fruit, and try to abandon as much as one can all the unwholesome thoughts and actions which are harmful both for oneself and others, and try to develop as much as one can the virtuous state of mind, such as compassion, loving kindness, which does not actually belong to any particular spiritual tradition or path, but something which is universally good for everybody, it will be still very beneficial for everybody. So His Holiness says, in that way, if you can put into practice what you have learned, what you have heard, little by little, then there's always a fruit. Then the purpose is fulfilled. Otherwise, then we're simply we are just wasting time talking a lot. He knows there are a lot of people here who are a good practitioner of Dharma. So His Holiness to make the request that you try to still make further progress in your practice and not let it deteriorate. And also even of those who are not particularly practicing now, practicing Dharma, but still one should if one can practice follow the law of cause and effect and karma and fruit, it will be very beneficial in many ways. So what he's only saying this it's about what he has to say for this afternoon.